do you ever get to the end of a job, you're finished, client's happy, job's turned out schmick, guys have done a really good job, but when it comes to the money, you just don't know what's happened to it. It just feels like it's vanished out the back door. And when you look at your bank account, it sure as hell doesn't reflect the work that you just put in. If anything, kind of feels like you're going backwards. Cash flow is always a battle. It feels like money comes in and money just flies straight out the door. And you just look at the whole thing and you just think, I don't even know why this is happening. I'm not sure. I don't know. Why am I not making the money? Well, the answer is simple. You're simply not charging enough money. And I'm about to show you why. Let me take you back probably, I'll say maybe 10, 15 years ago. Took on a reasonably small renovation, I guess at the time. It was about 300 grand. And at the time, I'd won so much work. I put that job in, I tendered for it, I won the work, and then all of a sudden, all the tenders that I'd put in, all the quotes, I seemed to win them all, and they all just wound up in my lap, all at the same time. So here I am, I've got this 300 grand job going, and it starts to get a bit out of hand. I'm running around like a blue ass fly, going from job to job to job to job, trying to stay on top of everything, and quite frankly, the whole thing just gets away from me. And we get to the end of the job, I hand it over to the client, there's not one defect on the whole job. It's worked out Mickey Mouse. I wasn't even able to put the nail bag on at all for that whole job. I walked away from that job thinking to myself, I reckon I've done me nuts on that. And I went back home and I ran the numbers on it. Sure enough, on a $300,000 job, it should have made a gross profit of 20%, which is 60 grand. It's actually not a lot of money. 60 grand in the grand scheme of things can go so quickly in a building company. And I went back, I looked at the numbers, sure enough, I'd spent the full 60. And basically the business made no profit on that job. And it was extremely disappointing because tied up all the boys in it, did this, did that. Client was really happy, but I was absolutely freaking pissed right off because I hadn't made no money. So it taught me a huge lesson that I've never forgotten. And it was quite simple. The way that I was pricing my jobs was absolutely broken. So let me show you how a well-oiled building company should run. And basically, your margin is your reward. That's it. Your margin is your reward. And this is how it's broken down inside a building company. This whole circle here represents profit. Gross profit. Now, when you break it down in its simplest form, it's quite simple. Let's just call that whole circle here 20% margin. That is our profit for running a building company. We have to be shooting for that. And here's why. Half of it, 10%, is gone in overheads. Things like your office, admin, someone that you employ in the office to do all your admin, the work ute, insurance, any softwares that you might have, and so much more. That 10% right there is what it costs to simply open the doors of your business. 10%. So straight away, half of your 20 has gone in here. Now the other half, this other 10%, is your reward. That's what you get as a business owner for wearing all the risk. That is the real reward. That's all we're after in business. Inside here, you're getting paid a wage at market rate to actually run the business and make it happen. And your goal when you sit in here is to make sure the business turns a 10% net profit, because that is your reward for running the business. That is profit you keep. That's for you. That's how you should be running your building company. 10% reward, because you've done all the work, you've taken all the risk. The thing is, it only works if you run a tight ship. You've got to control what you spend and protect your margin at all times. So you can quite quickly see 20% margin is not just you taking it and putting 20% straight in your pocket. Sadly, a lot of builders think, yeah, mate, made 20% profit on that job, great, it's all for me. It's actually not all for you. Half is gone in overheads. That's what it costs to run your business. That's what it costs to open the door before you turn over 1 cent. The other 10% is your reward for running a well-oiled business. But here's the problem. So many builders are not getting this 10% reward right here. In fact, they're often getting $0. And in my case, on that $300,000 reno, it was all gone, all of it. It actually cost me this 10% to run my overheads. So I actually went backwards. And if you talk about a $300,000 job, 60% gross profit is what, $60,000 gross profit is what it should have made, which it didn't. It spent all of the money, which meant that half of it for overheads, 30 grand, put me in the red. I didn't make any profit, and the business certainly didn't make any profit. So it comes down to two things. Number one, the way that you price your jobs is super important. You must have your pricing absolutely dialed. And number two, you must track everything, every cent, right across the board, because we need to protect our margin. Now, if you've seen my video where I talk about how I lost $300,000, there's two items in there that I want to touch on today, just briefly. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. But there's two items that most builders don't charge. And number one is a carpentry allowance, because as you started your business, you were on the tools. You were building shit, you were doing demolition, you probably did a bit of plaster, you probably did this, did that, and maybe a bit of painting. The bottom line is, you're getting paid for that because you're on the tools. And the second bit of income is project management. And the moment you scale, you give up both of those. And that's pretty much what happened on this 30 grand job. It just got away from me. I couldn't be there anymore, and I needed to give it to somebody else. Sure enough, 60 grand out the door because my pricing model was absolutely flawed. So you never put a number on what it actually should cost the client to have you project manage their job. They've just never paid for it. You just rock up, you do the job, and you think it's all included. You've never actually put a number on it. You just absorbed it. So up until now, you've basically been pricing your jobs as a worker. You've just been pricing them as though I'll do the job, I'll make money, and you're sort of double dipping on every job because you're picking up on carpentry allowance and maybe a little bit of margin, but it's a false economy. You're actually not making profit at all. You're doing the work. that's how you're making profit, because you're doing the work. Scale and you can't be doing the work anymore. So what's left? Your price. That's all you've got left. And the whole thing just starts to unravel and fall apart, because the business was never built to carry those sort of overheads. We need to build a price that carries the business. That's the key thing here. We must build a price that carries our business. We need gross profit to ensure that you make what you want to make for actually taking all the risk. And the biggest thing is you need to hang on to that for the whole job and make sure that you turn a profit at the end. So let me show you what actually happens to the money on the job. So basically, you've paid everyone but you. So let's talk about a 700k job that you've just won. That's money going to come in. So in the first box in the middle, we've got trades. In the next box, we've got subs. In the next one, we've got materials. Get all these right and you'll turn a profit. We're shooting for 20% profit. But here's what happens. Over the other side, 2 more boxes. We have uncharged variations. We have jobs that ran over. They ran over time, a couple of weeks over. You think it doesn't really matter. It actually does make a big difference. And then the big one, you go and put on a site foreman. And he's now supposed to protect your business and make sure that you turn a profit. And what happens ultimately? We turn a profit or not. But what often happens here is when the business starts to get out of control, we lose these little 1%ers everywhere. And they absolutely matter. So let's talk about a few overruns that you might have. Let's just say we blow out on materials by 2%. Little 1%ers at the time, they don't seem like much, but they actually add up massively. Your subs, 3% over. And let's just say your trades, you finish on budget. You think it's not much, but it's huge at the end of the month, end of the quarter, 6 months, end of the year. You're talking tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in what we call margin creep. The next one, uncharged variations, happens all the time. So many guys are just too nice, too scared to charge a variation. So they lose that 4% immediately because they won't charge for it. And you think the job's running over time by 4, 5, 6 weeks doesn't cost you? Let's call that 6%. All of a sudden, the job's made $0 profit. Nothing left. Extremely disappointing. And trust me, doesn't matter the size of your job. If you can lose money at 300 grand, you can certainly lose money at 700. You can certainly lose money at $3 million. The bottom line is we must be tracking our jobs. We must be pricing correctly. We need to make sure that we're charging foreman rates in properly. and that our trades, whether we employ them or we use subcontractors, especially carpenters, we need to make sure that they're absolutely job costed. So when you look at a job like that, that's made no profit, I've basically finished the job and I've given the client a gift, which was me. I didn't make any profit. So I've given them my time, my expertise, my liability, my insurances, the risk that I take, the warranty that I'm going to carry on the job for the next 10 years if you live in Australia. I basically hand that over to the client and make no profit. Sadly, this happens across the board with builders, and it's the number one reason why builders go broke every day of the week. It's because they don't track and their pricing model is incorrect, and their pricing model is often set up as a one-man band. So here's how easy it is to go backwards. As a building company, you have lumps of cash coming in all the time. 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, sometimes 300, 400, 500 grand, depending on the size of the business. Your bank account spikes, all this money's in there, you think you're doing okay, and you start to draw a decent wage. But what's happening is you're actually going backwards because the jobs aren't profitable, and the stage claims are masking what's actually going on in the background. Now, do that long enough, and this is how really good tradesmen get super busy and booked out, but also wind up in crazy amounts of debt. The bottom line is, so many guys are getting paid a wage, and the business is not actually making money to support the wage that you're pulling. So it feels like you're doing well because there's money in all the time, hundreds of thousands flying through the bank, but what you're doing is you're actually digging yourself in a deeper and deeper and deeper hole. You're not being paid by the business, you're being paid by the job. The moment a stage claim gets paid, you get paid. And you think you're doing well, you're actually not. And the thing to remember, your overheads do not stop. They keep coming. So I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Greg, yeah, whatever, that sounds good, but if I price what you're telling me to price, I won't never win work. Let me show you exactly what you're doing. By making the decision saying, I'll never, excuse my handwriting, I want to show you what you're doing. So we drew the circle before, which is your margin circle. Again, 10%, that's your profit. That's what you keep when you run a really well-run business. The other 10% is overheads. That's what it costs to run the business. And over here, you've got your client. He's all happy. You've just finished his job. Let me tell you what you're doing. By dropping your margin and going in cheap and not protecting it, you're basically giving him all your profit and saying, here mate, you just have it, and just handing it over. And he's happy. He's got a big smile on his face because you've just given him all your profit. The bottom line is, you carry the license. You carry the liability. You carry the guarantee, warranty, everything that goes with it. And you also carry the 3 AM stress. Huge risk, but you're fully prepared to give up your profit and give it to your client for free. Your client, he's happy because he got a ripper deal. He went with the cheapest quote, which was you, because you gave him your profit. If you genuinely believe that you're not going to get work at this rate, and you're happy to give up your 10% profit to your client so you can get work, that's a choice that you're making. So the choice is simple. You've just got to charge accordingly for running a business. You're not a one-man show anymore. You need to charge so the business survives. You're not a bad builder. You actually do a cracker job. You guys work super, super hard for your clients, and it's a tough game. Managing all this, managing the numbers, managing the trades, permits, everything else that goes with it, it's a massive deal, a massive job. So I challenge you to rethink about the way that you price your jobs. Make sure that you're charging the correct amount. 20% margin is what's required to run a really successful building company. Now, if you're running your business and you feel like you'd like some help with this stuff, this is exactly what I do. I run a program called High Performance Builder. It's where I help builders just like you fast track all this stuff and get you into profit as soon as possible. If that's something that interests you, jump on Instagram, send me a DM, and just type the word 300 and I'll reach out to you. Be great to help you out, help you build your business so that you're making really good profits. And if you take anything out of this video, implement a new pricing structure, protect your margin at all costs, and just remember why you're doing it. We need 10% net profit because you're wearing all the hats. It's super risky, and if you're not making profits, there's absolutely no point.